Have you ever held back from giving honest feedback because you didn't want to hurt someone's feelings? Or maybe you've worked for a boss who was brutally honest but left you feeling discouraged instead of motivated. Radical Candor is the leadership guide that solves this problem, showing you how to balance caring personally with challenging directly to create a culture of open, honest communication. Chapter 1: Build Radically Candid Relationships. Bringing your whole self to work. Imagine starting a new job and feeling like you're constantly walking on eggshells. You want to impress your boss, but you also don't want to say the wrong thing. Every interaction feels like a performance, and over time, the stress wears you down. Now, imagine the opposite: a workplace where you feel safe being yourself, where your boss genuinely cares about you, and where honesty is encouraged, not punished. That's the foundation of radical candor, and it all starts with relationships. At its core, being a great manager isn't about power, it's about connection. Too often, managers believe their job is to enforce rules, maximize efficiency, or just keep things moving. But real leadership happens when managers invest in relationships, when they care personally about the people they work with while also challenging them to do their best work. Think about the best boss you've ever had. Chances are, they weren't just someone who gave orders and expected results. They were someone who made you feel seen, heard, and valued. Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor, explains that leadership is not about barking orders from above. It's about guiding and supporting others so that, together, you achieve something greater than any individual could accomplish alone. She puts it simply: don't start by bossing people, they'll just hate you. Start by listening to them. But what does that actually look like in practice? It means taking time to know the people you work with, not just as employees, but as individuals. It means understanding their ambitions, their struggles, and what makes them tick. It also means creating a work culture where people feel safe to be honest. If your team is too afraid to tell you when something is wrong, you'll never be able to fix the real problems. However, there's a balance. Caring personally doesn't mean crossing professional boundaries. You don't need to be best friends with your team, and in fact, trying too hard to blur the lines between work and personal life can backfire. Instead, focus on meaningful conversations, regular check-ins where employees feel heard, an open-door policy where concerns are welcome, and a genuine investment in people's growth. One of the most important habits a manager can develop is regular one-on-one meetings. These aren't just for status updates. They're opportunities to build trust. Ask your employees about their goals, their challenges, and what support they need. And most importantly, listen. A leader who listens well earns the respect and trust of their team, and that trust is what makes radical candor possible. Scott makes it clear: when people feel cared for, they perform better. They're more engaged, more motivated, and more willing to take the risks necessary for real innovation. And when they know their boss will be honest with them, not just with praise but with constructive feedback, they'll trust that every piece of criticism is coming from a place of support, not punishment. So, if you're a manager, or if you ever plan to be one, ask yourself, are you building real relationships with the people you work with? Do they feel safe speaking honestly with you? And most importantly, are you bringing your whole self to work? Because when you do, you create a workplace where everyone can do the same. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Chapter 2: Get, Give, and Encourage Guidance. Creating a culture of open communication. Imagine you're working on a big project. You put in hours of effort, feeling confident about your work. Then, out of nowhere, your manager drops a bombshell. This isn't what we were looking for. No details, no suggestions, just criticism that leaves you frustrated and unsure of what went wrong. On the flip side, maybe you've had a boss who never gave feedback at all. You had no idea if you were doing well or failing miserably, and every performance review felt like a mystery. This is why guidance, both praise and criticism, is the foundation of good management. But here's the problem. Most people are terrible at giving and receiving feedback. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. There's a natural fear of conflict, power dynamics come into play, and no one wants to be the person who crushes someone's confidence. So what happens? People avoid tough conversations, let frustrations build up, or sugarcoat problems until they're meaningless. And that's where radical candor steps in. Kim Scott argues that creating a culture of open communication starts with leaders. If you want your team to be honest with you, you have to go first. Instead of waiting for feedback, ask for it. Show your team that you genuinely want to hear criticism. If you can model this behavior, it removes the fear around feedback and encourages people to share their thoughts openly. Scott puts it bluntly: soliciting guidance, especially criticism, is not something you do once and check off your list. This will now be something you do daily. But asking for feedback is just the beginning. Giving it effectively is just as important. The best feedback is impromptu, tied to specific behaviors, and given as close to the moment as possible. Imagine a basketball coach waiting until the end of the season to tell a player they've been shooting wrong the whole time. That would be absurd. Feedback works the same way. If you wait weeks or months to share it, the moment has passed and the lesson is lost. When giving guidance, keep it simple. Don't make it personal. Instead of saying, "You're bad at presenting," say, "In your last presentation, you spoke too quickly, and the audience struggled to follow along." Try pausing between key points. This shifts the focus from identity to behavior, something that can actually be changed. One of the biggest mistakes managers make is saving up feedback for formal reviews. By that point, it's too late. Think about it. If you only told your best friend once a year what you appreciated about them or what bothered you, how strong would your friendship be? Feedback needs to be ongoing, part of everyday conversations, not something reserved for performance evaluations. Trust is everything in a feedback culture. If people feel like criticism is an attack, they'll shut down. If praise feels empty or forced, they'll tune it out. The key is to build an environment where guidance is a normal, expected part of work, where it's given with the intent to help, not to tear down. So here's the challenge. The next time you feel hesitant about giving feedback, ask yourself, am I avoiding this conversation because it's uncomfortable or because it's truly unnecessary? And if you're not getting enough feedback yourself, start asking for it. The more you do, the more natural it will become. And before you know it, open communication will be a defining part of your team's culture. Chapter 3. Understand what motivates each person on your team, helping people take a step in the direction of their dreams. Picture this. You have two employees. One is eager to climb the career ladder, constantly seeking new challenges and responsibilities. The other is deeply skilled at their job and loves their work, but they have no interest in moving up the ranks. Now, imagine treating both of them the same way, pushing both toward promotions, assuming they both want leadership roles, or failing to recognize their unique motivations. What happens? One burns out under pressure, and the other starts looking for a new job because they feel undervalued. This is one of the biggest mistakes managers make, assuming everyone wants the same kind of career growth. Kim Scott breaks it down into two categories: superstars and rock stars. Superstars are the high achievers who thrive on rapid growth and new challenges. They're the ones who always want to take on more, move up, and push boundaries. Rock stars, on the other hand, are steady, reliable, and masters of their craft. They don't necessarily want to be promoted. They want to excel in their current role and find fulfillment in doing it well. Scott uses a great analogy. Rock stars are solid as a rock, like the Rock of Gibraltar, not like Bruce Springsteen. They provide stability, consistency, and deep expertise. And here's the key. Both superstars and rock stars are essential to a strong team. If you only focus on the superstars, constantly promoting and pushing for growth, you risk losing the rock stars who form the backbone of your organization. And if you fail to challenge your superstars, they'll leave in search of a place that does. The tricky part? People's ambitions change over time. Someone might be a superstar early in their career, then shift into a rock star role, when they find a niche they love. Others might be content in a steady role for years and then suddenly feel the urge to advance. The worst thing a manager can do is assume they know what an employee wants without actually having a conversation about it. So, how do you figure out what truly motivates your team? It starts with meaningful career conversations, not just about promotions, but about what drives them as individuals. Instead of asking, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" try asking, "What kind of work makes you feel the most fulfilled?" Or, "What skills do you want to develop?" These conversations should be structured but open-ended, giving employees a chance to reflect on what they really want. Scott emphasizes that aligning work with personal aspirations makes teams stronger. If someone dreams of becoming a writer, maybe you find ways for them to take on more content-related projects. If another team member loves problem-solving but dislikes management, don't force them into a leadership role just because it's the expected next step. Helping people grow in a direction that excites them, not just in the direction the company expects, creates a more engaged and committed workforce. So, take a moment to think about your own team. Who are your superstars? Who are your rock stars? And most importantly, have you asked them what they really want? Because when you understand their motivations, you don't just build a more effective team, you help people take real steps toward the lives they want to create. Chapter 4. Drive Results. Collaboratively. Telling people what to do doesn't work. Think back to a time when someone tried to control every step of a project you were working on. Maybe it was a manager who dictated every detail, leaving you no room for creativity or ownership. Or maybe it was the opposite, a leader so hands-off that you had no idea what was expected of you. In both cases, frustration builds, motivation drops, and results suffer. That's because great leadership isn't about barking orders or stepping back entirely. It's about guiding a team towards success through collaboration. Kim Scott makes it clear. Radical candor isn't about one person making all the decisions. It's about working together to achieve something bigger than what any individual could accomplish alone. When a leader fosters an environment of trust, communication, and shared responsibility, the team doesn't just follow instructions. They actively contribute, innovate, and push the work forward in ways the leader alone never could. As Scott puts it, if you want your team to achieve something bigger than you could achieve alone, if you want to burst the bounds of your brain, you have to care about the people you are working with. But how do you actually make collaboration work? First, leaders need to listen. Not just nod along and move on listening, but real listening, the kind that values input and encourages open dialogue. When employees feel safe sharing their ideas, the best solutions emerge naturally. Scott emphasizes that leadership is about balancing two extremes. Avoid micromanaging, which stifles creativity, but also avoid being so hands-off that no one knows what's happening. Think of a great coach. They don't just sit on the sidelines doing nothing, nor do they run onto the field to play every position themselves. Instead, they provide clarity, guidance, and support. They ensure that every player knows their role and how it contributes to the team's success. Good leaders do the same. They set clear expectations, trust their teams to execute, and step in when needed without taking over. One of Scott's mentors once told her, "There's a fine line between success and failure." That line often comes down to communication. When roles and responsibilities aren't clear, teams flounder. But when leaders take the time to clarify, debate, and align everyone around a shared objective, execution becomes smooth, and the team moves forward with confidence. So, what does this mean in practice? Start by creating a space where team members feel comfortable voicing their opinions. Encourage debate. Let people challenge ideas and refine them together. Avoid the trap of micromanaging. Instead, empower employees by giving them ownership of their tasks while offering support when necessary. And most importantly, never let your focus on results get in the way of caring about the people you work with. When you lead through collaboration, you build a team that doesn't just complete tasks. They take ownership, innovate, and drive real results. And that's the kind of team that can accomplish things no single leader ever could alone. Chapter 5. Relationships. An approach to establishing trust with your direct reports. Imagine you've just started a new job, and your manager seems distant. They check in only when they need something, and when they do, it feels like a transaction rather than a conversation. Now, imagine the opposite. A boss who makes time for you, listens to your ideas, and treats you like a real person rather than just another worker. Which of these leaders would you trust more? Trust isn't built overnight. It comes from consistency, fairness, and genuine personal care. Kim Scott makes a bold statement. Probably the most important thing you can do to build trust is to spend a little time alone with each of your direct reports on a regular basis. Regular one-on-one meetings aren't just about tracking progress, they're about connection. It's in these conversations that employees feel heard, and when they do, they're far more likely to trust their manager's leadership. But trust isn't just about having meetings. It's about being fully present in those meetings. A distracted, rushed, or indifferent manager can do more harm than good. Scott emphasizes that to genuinely care for others, you have to take care of yourself first. You can't give a damn about others if you don't give a damn about yourself. If a leader is overwhelmed, constantly stressed, or emotionally checked out, their team will sense it. Staying centered and maintaining personal well-being isn't selfish. It's essential for being an effective leader. That said, relationships at work require a careful balance. Some managers try to be overly friendly, blurring the lines between professional and personal relationships. While socializing can help build rapport, Scott warns against crossing into unprofessional territory. It's important to respect personal and cultural boundaries. What feels natural in one workplace might be uncomfortable in another. Trust is built not just through casual conversations, but through fairness, respect, and a commitment to open communication. One of the biggest mistakes leaders make is assuming that relationships will form naturally over time. But in reality, strong workplace relationships are built with intention. Encouraging open dialogue, making time for personal check-ins, and showing genuine interest in each team member's well-being all contribute to a workplace where people feel safe to be themselves. And when employees feel safe, they perform at their best. Scott sums it up perfectly. To have a good relationship, you have to be your whole self and care about each of the people who work for you as a human being. It's not just business. It is personal, and deeply personal. A good leader doesn't just manage tasks, they manage relationships. And those relationships, built on trust, are what turn a group of individuals into a truly great team. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Chapter 6. Guidance. Ideas for getting, giving, and encouraging praise and criticism. Imagine you're working on a project, and after weeks of effort, your manager finally gives you feedback. This isn't working. No details, no explanation, just vague criticism that leaves you frustrated and confused. Or maybe you've had a boss who only ever pointed out what you did wrong, but never acknowledged what you did well. It's demoralizing, right? On the flip side, some managers avoid criticism altogether, afraid of hurting feelings, which leaves employees stuck in bad habits with no direction for improvement. That's why guidance, both praise and criticism, is at the heart of good leadership. Kim Scott describes guidance as the atomic building block of management. But here's the problem. Most people hate giving and receiving feedback. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward, and if done poorly, it can damage relationships. That's why radical candor is so important. It teaches us how to give feedback in a way that is both kind and clear. Scott lays out a simple but powerful formula. Care personally and challenge directly. If you challenge without caring, you come off as harsh. If you care but don't challenge, you become ineffective. Great feedback lives at the intersection of both. It pushes people to improve while making them feel valued. One of the most effective ways to foster a culture of feedback is to ask for criticism before giving it. This does two things. It shows that you are open to feedback yourself, making others more likely to be receptive when you offer it, and it normalizes the idea that feedback is a two-way street. As Scott puts it, soliciting guidance, especially criticism, is not something you do once and check off your list. This will now be something you do daily. But how should feedback be given? First, it should be immediate. The longer you wait, the less impact it has. Imagine a sports coach waiting until the end of the season to tell an athlete they've been using the wrong technique. It wouldn't make any sense. Feedback should also be delivered in person whenever possible. A quick conversation is far more effective than an impersonal email, which can be misinterpreted. When giving criticism, focus on behavior, not personality. Instead of saying, "You're not a great communicator," say, "In yesterday's meeting, you interrupted a few people before they finished their thoughts." Try letting them finish before responding. This makes the feedback actionable rather than personal. Praise is just as important as criticism, but it has to be done right. Generic praise like "great job" feels hollow. Instead, be specific. That presentation was really strong because you clearly explained the data and made it easy to understand. Praise should also be public whenever possible, reinforcing positive behaviors and making employees feel recognized. Scott also emphasizes that feedback habits need to be adapted for remote teams. When people aren't in the same physical space, quick, frequent interactions become even more important. A simple "got a minute" call can make a world of difference in keeping remote employees connected and engaged. So here's the challenge. Start by asking for feedback before giving it. Make your praise specific and your criticism clear but kind. And most importantly, make guidance a regular part of your conversations, not something reserved for annual reviews. When done right, feedback isn't something to be feared. It becomes the key to growth, trust, and high performance. Chapter 7. Team. Techniques for avoiding boredom and burnout. Have you ever worked on a team where half the people seemed overworked and stressed out, while the other half seemed disengaged and unmotivated? Maybe you felt one of those extremes yourself, drowning in responsibility with no time to breathe, or stuck in a monotonous role that felt like it was leading nowhere. Both burnout and boredom can silently kill a team's effectiveness. And as a manager, it's your job to strike the right balance. Kim Scott points out that a great team isn't made up of just one type of employee. Some people thrive on fast growth and constant challenge. They're the superstars, always pushing the limits and gunning for the next opportunity. Others prefer stability and mastery. They're the rock stars, providing steady, consistent excellence. The key is understanding that both are essential for long-term success. If you push every team member toward relentless growth, burnout is inevitable. But if you only focus on stability, the team stagnates. Managers must be intentional about balancing these different types of ambition. This starts with regular career conversations, not just during annual reviews, but as an ongoing practice. Instead of assuming you know what someone wants, ask them. Some employees might be on a slow and steady trajectory right now, but may want to accelerate later. Others might be at a point in life where they need stability, but could be interested in a new challenge down the road. Scott emphasizes, all people have their own growth trajectories, and it's a mistake to push everyone to be either a superstar or a rock star. So how do you keep your team engaged without pushing them too hard? First, be mindful of workloads. Burnout happens when people are constantly overloaded without a clear path forward. If someone is staying late every night and struggling to keep up, it's a red flag that they need support. Whether that's additional resources, a shift in priorities, or simply permission to slow down. On the other hand, boredom sets in when employees don't feel challenged. If someone is doing the same thing day in and day out with no opportunities to grow, they'll eventually check out mentally, even if they're still physically showing up. Scott also warns against a one-size-fits-all approach to promotions. Some companies have a rigid structure where the only way to reward someone is by moving them up the ladder. But what if they love what they're doing and don't want to be promoted? Forcing someone into a leadership role they don't want can lead to disengagement or even turnover. Instead, managers should create multiple paths for recognition, whether that's through pay increases, special projects, or public acknowledgement of their contributions. At the end of the day, keeping a team engaged and motivated isn't about pushing harder or backing off completely. It's about balance. As Scott puts it, ideally, you want everyone on your team to achieve exceptional results, but you don't want 100% of them to be gunning for the next job or to be content with their current role. The goal is to create an environment where people feel valued, challenged, and supported, so they don't just stay in their jobs, but thrive in them. Chapter 8. Results. Things you can do to get stuff done together faster. Imagine a team where things just work, where decisions are made efficiently, problems get solved before they become major roadblocks, and people don't waste time in endless meetings. Now, imagine the opposite, a team drowning in miscommunication, where no one knows who's responsible for what, and every decision feels like it's stuck in quicksand. The difference between these two teams isn't talent or resources, it's structure. Kim Scott makes it clear. Radical candor isn't just about being a good boss, it's about getting things done. And the best way to achieve results isn't by micromanaging or issuing top-down directives. It's by creating an environment where people can collaborate effectively and solve problems before they even reach leadership. As Scott puts it, the ultimate goal of radical candor is to achieve results collaboratively that you could never achieve individually. So how do you build a high-functioning team that gets stuff done? It starts with communication. One of the biggest responsibilities of a leader is making sure the right people are talking to each other at the right time. That means structuring meetings wisely, having regular one-on-ones to stay connected, all-hands meetings to align the team, and decision-making discussions that actually lead to action. Bad meetings drain energy and waste time, but good meetings keep everyone moving in the same direction. Another key ingredient is balance. Too much oversight leads to micromanagement, but too little creates chaos. The best teams operate with autonomy and accountability, where people have the freedom to do their work, but also feel responsible for the outcomes. A truly great team is self-correcting. They don't rely on a manager to fix every little issue because they've built a culture where people take ownership and solve problems themselves. One of Scott's most powerful frameworks for making this happen is the Get Stuff Done, GSD wheel, which breaks down collaboration into clear steps. Listen, take in ideas and concerns from the team. Clarify, make sure everyone understands the problem before jumping to solutions. Debate, encourage open, honest discussions to explore different viewpoints. Decide, commit to a clear course of action. Persuade, get buy-in from everyone involved. Execute, take action and move forward. Learn, reflect on what worked and what didn't, then adjust. By following this cycle, teams don't just work, they improve over time. They become faster, more adaptable, and more efficient at solving problems together. And that's what makes a team truly unstoppable. So if you're leading a team, ask yourself, are we structured for efficiency, or are we bogged down by confusion? Do people feel empowered to solve problems, or do they always wait for approval? By implementing structured communication, fostering a culture of ownership, and using the GSD wheel, you can create a team that doesn't just get stuff done, but gets it done faster and better than ever before.